Hi everyone, welcome back to Window Chats with Robyn, the Instagram Live podcast where I sit by my window and chat with very interesting people. Today's guest is David Fournier. We met on set and I just really appreciate the amount of history that he shared with me and he's a history buff. We are going to be talking about Israel. I'm Jewish. And this is the subject matter that I would like to discuss. I just ask that everyone's respectful of our opinions. I am keeping the chat on and I'm going to invite David in. And let's send him in. I saw you request it. It was working. Yeah, no, and I saw that. There. This is when technology doesn't like to be my friend. It's very dramatic. I'm going to try and invite you in. Oh, you joined. Oh my God, you're here.
Hello.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
I want to ask how you're doing, but I kind of hate that question these days. So I'm just going to thank you for joining me.
Oh, okay. I'll ask a question. How you doing?
Oh, okay. I've been better, I think, personally, but I appreciate, I appreciate you coming on and us like having this discussion. So yeah, interesting times we live in.
You know what? You said that I don't like how you doing. Well, I also don't like that because I'm always one that likes to play on people's cliches. They don't realize, like, okay, like this one. You know when like someone says, "Oh, I can't bring a child into this world. It's so horrible." I always go, "At what point wasn't it?"
That's true. That is true. The world.
Like, please give me an example. And
No,
usually people's examples is all based on nostalgia because of when they were younger or childhood because they were more innocent, so it's an invalid point, right? So anyway, that's what I'll start with there. A little humor.
No, it's fair. And that's the thing, right? Like I tend to go to humor too when I'm just like, I'm going to do some dark comedy because that's how I feel. So like this is, again, I'm not judging how anyone is feeling these past couple weeks and like how, like, I just appreciated the fact that you knew a little bit about Israel and you just wanted to share a little history there. Cause I thought that was really interesting, right? It's, that kind of perspective when you're taking a more pragmatic approach. Cause I think now emotions are really high and just kind of taking a step back and sharing a different perspective is always appreciated, at least on my end.
Right. And thank you for that. And that was a big reason why I wanted to come on because, okay, you know what? I'll just give some background of myself. I'm a total mutt. I have such a mixed background. So my mother's side, she was born in Romania, but even that was because it was right after the Holocaust. So her family was displaced. They were originally from Czech. Her father was Romanian, whatever. So Eastern European Jews, that's my Jewish side. But then on my dad's side, they're Roman Catholic, Irish, French, all over the place. So I was not brought up religious at all. So I was brought up to have a very open-minded view of all of my heritages and the history behind it. And I guess because of that respect, I became early on fascinated with history and just all aspects of history. And I love to really know my stuff. So that's what I'll start with there. So, but yes, I am Jewish and I am pro-Israel. But even that is with the caveat because I like to be pragmatic about it, try to be as logical as possible. As much as obviously I have emotion attached to it, I try and quell the emotion as much as I can. Because I think the problem with all of these kind of discussions, especially when it involves war, is people are just so riled up emotion, they can't see straight. They cannot think straight, they can't see straight, and nothing gets accomplished. Absolutely nothing gets accomplished, right?
For sure.
So my sister, like you, I have family that lives in Israel. We had total coincidence. Our family lives in the exact same town, which is Beit Shemesh, which is like the most Orthodox religious city in Israel. It's like a population of like 300,000, something like that. Not a very exciting city, but but anyway. So my sister and her 8 children all live there. So obviously, that's a very close attachment for me. I just visited them last summer, so a year and a half ago. So obviously, the idea of people I care about so much in a wartime situation, don't want to think about it. I have a first cousin who also grew up here in Toronto, who's actually on the front lines for Israel right now. So yeah, so I definitely have emotional attachments. So that's a good test to me of can I detach myself to have an intellectual conversation about the facts. And
as actors, we're always challenging ourselves, right? So this is for your demo reel, quite frankly.
Yeah. No, send it to me. I'll use it for my demo reel. So that's my background. But yes, I like to be as pragmatic as possible. And just to continue on the family, I also have, on my dad's side of the family, I have 2 younger cousins who also are Jewish because of their other side of the family. And they are an example of Jews that are very anti-Israel. They're extremely pro-Palestine. And I respect them for that because I think a misnomer that a lot of people have is that being Jewish and supporting Israel is mutually exclusive. No, it's not. Of course it's not, right? You don't have to love Israel just because you're Jewish, right? So I do respect them, their point of views, that they're extremely pro-Palestine. And so it's the idea of, again, being mature enough to, I still love you and I respect your opinion. I just don't fully agree with it. That's all. But I do agree with parts of it. So I guess if I had to give it a number, I'd say I'm like 70-30 pro-Israel. And even that is like a very cold way of putting it because it's so complicated. Okay, first of all, people, let's just admit here, this is the most contested land in the history of humanity. It really is. It's not even close. Not even close. So anyone out there, especially when you're getting all emotional about I'm pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, if you're trying to make this a black and white subject, that is a huge downplay right there, because it's not even close to a black and white subject. And for those of you who are maybe younger generations who haven't seen this over and over again throughout the decades of the constant butting heads and conflict, the sad part is it doesn't really feel like it ever changes. And so it can be gut-wrenching. And right now it feels like we're at a pretty low point. Like I don't remember, at least in my lifetime, there being a lower point than this. This feels really low in the sense of it's really hard to see any pathway forward to something happy, right? To a peaceful solution, if you will. But before, I'm going to go on a little bit of a historical rant here, just because, again, I like to lay out what history is before we come to the present day. So before I do that, did you want to add anything?
No. I love your passion. I love your energy, and I appreciate you sharing, right? Like, just because you're Jewish, like everyone has different stances on Israel, and everyone is entitled to their own opinion, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. I think the trouble we're getting into now is it's kind of like, okay, well, if you support Israel, you support every Jew everywhere, and it's kind of, the anti-Semitism it's really hard to be Jewish and not be connected to Israel, is what I'm finding. You know, like if you're Jewish in Toronto, we're going to attack you because of what's happening in Israel. So that's definitely hard for my family in Toronto right now with anti-Semitism. And I think it's really hard for people to separate the two. If your problems really are truly with the situation in Israel, then you shouldn't be attacking Jews in Toronto, right? So I think that's kind of how I'm feeling a little, you know, it's hard being Jewish and in Toronto right now, personally, is how I'm feeling. Yeah,
and that goes hand in hand with what I was saying about it's not mutually exclusive.
Exactly.
Being a Jew and being pro-Israel. And I think the really dark, sad part of what we see of that is everyone else who isn't Jewish makes that assumption.
Yeah.
And so what you see, like you say, examples, is you see people's racism coming up because this is just giving them an excuse to now show that actually they have a problem with Jews in general. Right, they're just using the Israeli thing as a reason to show, you know, you damn Jews and all that stuff, and yeah, that is sort of a dark hidden truth behind it. But it's like trust me, people, there are plenty of Jews up there who just don't care.
Well, that's the thing too.
Who don't want to get involved, who don't think, and yet you're coming after them because something's happening halfway across the world. They're like, what's wrong with you?
Right, and it's just, a mutual, we're going to blame Jews everywhere, all around the world. And it's just, I think it's really hard for people, especially in the film industry that I've been talking to, film and theater. It just feels really hard because, you know, a lot of people feel the need to share without completely understanding the situation, that don't have an emotional attachment per se. And it's very easy to feel isolated. So again, why I'm doing these chats, and then, like, again, I'm just speaking from what I feel, but I do these chats because I just want to provide a voice to, like, people like that are Jewish that want to share a little bit of history, that want to share some thoughts, because it is easier. Like, Jews are a minority, And, you know, it kind of seems like the louder voice is being heard more and people are caring more about the other side. And again, that's just how I feel. These are the things that I'm saying. That's my opinion. And yeah, again, this is the reason why I restarted this podcast, was to just have conversations and discuss how Jews are feeling. And yeah, so I don't know. I'm rambling. I know I'm not going to sound articulate because I've been in a rough space. It's been some dark times, but yeah.
I think the good yin to the yang here is you're adding a bit more emotion.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely, I'm really holding back my emotion. I'm trying to be neutral, but the struggle is real. Yeah.
No, hey, be you. You got to be you, man.
Yeah.
What's the point of doing public talks like this if you're not going to be your authentic self, right?
For sure.
You can't always be trying to please everyone. That's just not how it is, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I can sound like I'm trying to please anyone, but that's just actually how a pragmatic person talks, because they're trying to. There's a difference between being a spineless person who's just trying to please everyone and trying to be someone who's empathetic to put yourself in each person's shoes, right? I can understand the pain of people that are pro-Palestine. The Palestinians themselves, oh my God, it's horrific, it's awful. But I could also understand the pain of the Jewish people feeling, oh my God, here we go again, and this vice gripping down on you. So that's how I like to take the approach. So before I start on the historical thing, I just want to first state that, yes, I think this is all just awful. I don't think there's a winner or loser in this conflict. I mean, the present conflict right now, everyone's a loser whenever there's war, whenever there's just terrible tragedy. And like I said, this feeling of like no hope in sight. Yeah. I wish, ever since I was a kid, when I first learned about these things, because this stuff was going on in the 90s and all that. And of course, my mother is an extremely emotional person about Israel because, so my mother, to sidebar for a second, she is a good example of, she's literally one of the original Israel people, because her family, part of, again, came out of the Holocaust, they took the new opportunity that was Israel at the time, and they moved there in like 1952. So she was there when like Israel was brand new, and she'd never seen anywhere where Jews didn't feel oppressed and all that. And so she has very happy memories of there. I think she moved from there to here when she was like 13, 14. So she is very, very happy. And even her story about leaving Israel, she just, chokes up every time she tells the story. She can't handle it. So she definitely has that attachment to it. So I remember her telling me stuff and educating me stuff in the 90s when I was a kid. And even then, I remember just thinking like, yeah, why can't we just share the country? Can't we just have a peaceful, like any kid does, like, why not? What's the big deal here, right? Like, come on, people, get your act together.
Right? Like, let's share. We learned how to share in kindergarten. Exactly. Is this not a thing? Yeah.
I was great at sharing. I got some Halloween candy.
Oh my God.
I'll share.
Virtually send it.
I will share it. So, yeah, and then as I got older, even understanding the idea of can we have a viable Palestinian state? Same idea. I was just like, come on, got to make this work. Got to make this work. So, with that being said, let's go into history. So, what I'm going to actually do here is I'm going to backtrack history. I'm going to actually start from when Israel was formed. So, Israel was formed in the late 40s. And it was a decree of the United Nations that they decided that we will give this land. And of course, the Arab nations voted against it, but they were overruled because everyone else voted for it. Because obviously at the time, there was a lot of sympathy for the Jewish people after the Holocaust. And a lot of things that people don't address, because in the end, it's still about power and who's in control, right? It wasn't just that the United Nations made this decision, but it was technically Palestine, the land of Palestine, was owned by the British Empire.
Yeah.
So the British Empire easily just went, yeah, sure, here, take it. You can have it. Like, so that's a lot of things people don't realize, is that they technically owned it. So, and after the war, the British Empire was completely in tatters. They lost their power basically by just hanging on by a thread. So that's why all these places they own, like India and all those places, eventually they're South Africa, they're like, we can't afford to control you anymore, right? So now let's go back further than that. So basically, before there was Israel, for 25 years, British Empire controlled Palestine. So what really angers me is the amount of people out there who don't know their facts and keep saying, literally saying, they post things that Palestine was a country. It was never, ever, ever a country. And I'm going to show that to you right now. Because for those 25 years, from 1947 to 1920, it was right after the First World War, the British Empire completely owned Palestine. Palestine was not self-governing. And to be a country, you kind of have to be self-governing, right?
For sure.
You got to be independent. And so literally, British soldiers were everywhere. They were on the streets of Jerusalem, all over the place. It was a very British-controlled place. It was called Palestine, but it was definitely not a state, and it was not a country. I feel like going off into a social media rant, but I won't yet. I want to get the history down first. About misinformation was letting go now, but I should go through this smoothly first. So before 1920, for about 400 years, Palestine was owned by the Ottoman Empire. For those of you who don't know, the Ottoman Empire is basically Turkey today. More than that, but it's the easiest way. It was centered around Turkey, okay? So, and Ottoman Empire was actually the one that coined the phrase Palestine. They gave it the name Palestine. But again, just like the British Empire that took over afterwards, they were in complete control. There was no self-governing of Palestine whatsoever, okay? So I want to make that very clear at first. This is not an anti-Palestine rant so much. These are facts. These are facts, okay? And so I see people posting that this was a country that was taken over by Israel. It's like, no, it just wasn't. It was never a self-governing country. It was always owned. In fact, you feel bad for the land because it was never self-governing. It was like always. Now, that's not true, but you have to go back really far. So I'm not going to go through the whole list, but then you go through the Crusades. And for people who don't know about the great time of the Crusades, that's your main medieval times, is you had England and all the Western European countries fighting the Muslims and the Africans. It's just like everyone for hundreds of years was fighting over Jerusalem because this was the holy place of all these religions. And it was just year after year, and it just kept changing hands. The land just kept changing hands, kept changing hands. You want to go further back, you got the Roman Empire involved, yada, yada, yada. But if you want to go back to the beginning, it was the land of the Israelites, of the Jews. 100%. There's no debating that. So if you want to talk about whose land it originally was, it's like, where do you draw the line? I understand that as time passes, people go, oh, but that doesn't count anymore. I'm like, okay, fine. But then you have to apply that to all of your reasoning. You can't just apply this to when you want it to make sense. Yeah. Here's an example. A big problem with, I find, a lot of people that are pro-Palestinian is, again, it's so black and white that they're like, just, you're occupying, go off the land. I'm like, what? You expect 10 million Israel like to just leave? You think is that a realistic? That sounds like war. That sounds like bloodbath to me. That does not sound like a very nice solution, does it? And then you go, yeah, but they're occupying the land. I'm like, okay, so why not all Americans leave America? And it's the indigenous people. You know what I mean? Like, when is your line? And that's a much more recent thing than something like thousands of years ago. So that's my point, is when do you draw the line? So going back to the history, the first three, basically, empires of the land of Israel were Jews. It was first called the Canaanites. That was the original settling. The original settling, they were called the Canaanites, and they were Jewish. And then it was called the Kingdom of Israel. No, something of the Israelites. My apologies.
I mean, you know what? I'm taking you at your word. I hope your history is right.
Oh, no, it is. I may not have the name exactly right, but I got the gist.
This seems like misinformation.
No, trust me. I
am
very meticulous. Yeah. I'm actually horribly embarrassed when someone proves me wrong. Historically, I'm not stubborn about it. I will apologize. I'm like, I am sorry if that.
I don't want to have.
Please correct me.
Retractions on this live. Okay.
Yeah, no, serious. Like, anyone who's watching this, and if I'm saying something wrong about the history of Israel and Palestine, like, please correct me, because that's part of a conversation. I'm not here to just be loud and talk and say I'm right. That's not the way I work. Okay. So anyway, so if you want to go all the way back to the beginning, yes, it was the Jewish people's land, and then taking over this, and obviously famously in the Bible, the Egyptians ousting the Jews from Israel. So there you go. You got all these examples, and it goes on and on. It is the most contested land in the history of humanity. So the fact that you try and make it clear cut and just a line drawn in the sand and black and white of, no, this is our land, no, this is our land, you're going to drive yourself nuts, and no one's going to ever win, because it's a very illogical, overly emotional conversation that doesn't really have logic or facts. So to finish off the history lesson, I'm going to go back.
Okay, there's a quiz later.
I'm gonna go back
appreciate
to
this.
the future.
I do appreciate this. Yeah.
No. Thank you. Me too. You know, I like. Yeah. If anything, you know what? It almost goes away from the issue, and it's more about. I get passionate about history. I love history. So, okay, let's go back to 1947. It becomes Israel. Like I said, it was mainly because of the United Nations and the British who completely owned Palestine. Again, there was no state of Palestine. There was no country of Palestine. But yes, they were Palestinian people because it was a land called Palestine. Mm-hmm. And of course, right, you know, you want to keep your culture, your people. I'm all for that. So, but they were owned. They were ruled by the British. And before that, the Ottoman Empire. So now they're Israel in 1947. Right away, within a year, they have the first Arab-Israeli war because the Arab nations are all pissed off about this. So they try and invade, stuff like that. It's very short. Not much happens. Israel basically defends itself to show strength that you can't push us around. But then the next significant moment comes in the late 60s, which is called the Six-Day War. And this, too, the whole idea that the Arab nations are all for state of Palestine, not as black and white either. Because believe it or not, for a while, so again, what's known as Palestine is generally the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. They're not connected by land. There's a big separation between them, but they're the two parts that are considered Palestine. And for a while there, after it became Israel, Egypt completely owned the Gaza Strip. Again, no Palestine. There was no governing there. So even though it was, you know, the people where it wasn't Israel, like that was completely Egypt owned. Transjordan, what it was called at the time, and now it's basically Jordan and a bit of other things, completely invaded the West Bank. They took over East Jerusalem and the West Bank. So they took over Palestine. They did not give Palestine. They did not let them govern themselves. So again, giving you some history, all right, that there's all this complication involved, that even the so-called Arab League of Nations, they're fighting each other. They can't agree on anything, right? So the Six-Day War happens in 1967, and that is basically when Israel takes back the Gaza Strip from Egypt and takes back the West Bank from Transjordan, okay? They did not take it back from the Palestinians. They were these other countries occupying them, okay? So let's fast forward quickly so we can get up to date. There is technically, look it up, and please prove me wrong if you can, never was there actually a state of Palestine. That means a self-governed body until 1988. That was not established until 1988 when then the leader was Yasser Arafat, a very famous historical image of him. And so that was when it was the first state recognized. It was recognized around the world, this is a state of Palestine. And again, is basically what it is today, which is the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, okay? So that is essentially it. And then we can get into more complicated things like, yes, once you reach 2006, they had sort of elections in Gaza, and then that's when Hamas took over from the Fatah, and anyway, and that's where we are today, because obviously most people recognize Gaza as a terrorist, or Hamas as a terrorist, or you see, this is where this misinformation.
Fact check yourself
start
there.
Saying the wrong words. Start saying the wrong words. Yeah, that's important. So Hamas took over, and let me just say this. Even if you don't think Hamas is a terrorist organization, anyone who takes hostages, do you really recognize that as something good? Now, I know war is never a good thing and always has bad and good sides, but if part of what you stand for is willing to take hostages, do you really think this organization stands for good? And that's my question to you, if you actually think Hamas is a recognized governing body of Gaza.
It is interesting that the question you posed was taking hostages, right? Because I would go, being more in the emotional side, I would go, do you think the way the massacre of October 7th, the way babies were slaughtered and beheaded, and the way they, you know, kidnapped people, desecrated their bodies, raped women, like I would go there because that's, to me, again, war is horrible, and the fact that there's going to be innocent casualties on both sides is not, no one wants that. But I think even just the way you go in and the way you kill people, and that's normalized and you're praised for killing people that way, I think that to me is, how can this not be terrorism. That's where I'm at personally. But I agree as well, right? You're kidnapping people, and the people kidnapped, I keep seeing videos. It's horrible. You know, I don't know if she, like, just the, again, I'm hearing a lot of personal stories. I'm trying to not keep it emotional. So there is a lot, right? They have now over 203 people kidnapped in Gaza, being held hostage. And it's just scary. Again, hearing the personal stories, there's over 100 people still missing, right? So we don't know where they are. Are they, because again, the bodies were so desecrated, you can't even tell what's left of them, right? So that to me is just not someone that wants peace. That's not, and I think it was the whole, when people are siding and justifying, well, you know, we did this because we've been oppressed, so we have a right to do this to you. And I think anyone that feels that they have a right to do this to any human being is like just something I cannot agree with.
Yeah.
And associate, like, I just can't support that. No matter
I'm
how.
I'm glad you said that, because yes, you're obviously getting into the more awful, gritty details. I think the reason I just mentioned hostages was because, yes, when you are dealing with people that are looking at as, you know, like the old saying, like, you know, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, right? And there is a certain logic to that, because obviously if you are oppressed, sometimes you're so desperate that you do have to do some nasty things. But yeah, there's still a line. There always has to be a morality line, right? And so I think
maybe it's because it's also, you know, I see like cerebral palsy, like that you're targeting people with cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy. Like, these are the people that are going to retaliate against you. This poor girl in a wheelchair, this 12-year-old that just went to see a music festival. Again, like that's what it is. Like, you're taking it's, and I know everyone keeps obsessing about, oh, well, we didn't behead all 40 babies. I'm like, okay, you killed babies. What are they? What was the baby going to do to you, right? That whole notion, and like senior citizens and all, just it was the I don't know. I'm just feeling a lot of ways. I'm struggling to express myself these past couple weeks. So I bring on guests that can talk for me. And that is why you're here.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you see, okay, like, yeah, I think, because so often when these conflicts happen in Israel, like a lot of people, I get numb to it. And I'm like, oh, here's another one. And I don't get that emotionally wrapped up. But this one, yeah, one of the emotional chords that hit me right away with this one was, remember, this was right at the very beginning when all that had happened was that massacre, right? There was no retaliation yet from Israel. And I was seeing all these protests around the country of people going pro-Palestine. I'm like, whoa, what are you cheering right now? So it's like they were waiting for an excuse to show their belief in supporting Palestine, which again is fine to believe, but it's like, do you realize what triggered you to do this? You just, this some horrible, like, Israel hadn't even fired any rockets yet, and you're just going, yeah, way to be terrorists, way to be horrible things, go Palestine, freedom fighters. This is what happens when you oppress people. I'm like, this is what happens when you oppress people? So, calm me down for a second. Again,
no, I agree, but I appreciate you saying that. That's exactly, I think that's how I wanted to phrase it. It's the whole, we were attacked, and the reaction of the world was to celebrate. And that's when, as a Jew, you know, as the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor that has grown up hearing these stories, I'm like, okay, I don't feel safe. I'm concerned. I don't know what I can do. Yeah,
and it again sort of it makes you feel the spread of misinformation and what people are reading or choosing not to read, because all they want to see is their cause, right? Which, you know what, I'm going to get to that in a bit, but first I just want to finish this thought. Absolutely. What we're saying. Yeah. So, but at the same time, I don't blame people's emotion who are very supportive of Palestine, in the sense that, yes, throughout history, we've seen actually great rebellions that are because of, yes, this is what happens when you oppress people, that they're given no other choice but to rile up together and unfortunately use violence in order to make a statement, to make a message. But there's a big difference between that, of being an organized sort of like people protesting, army and all that. And there's no sense from Hamas that this is the people. There's no sense from Hamas. This is a organization. And clearly that's been proven is funded by under the hand places, getting the weapons from here and that and all that stuff. And again, you know, I don't want to get into that because all countries have their dark, even Israel, like, where do you get your weapons from? Like, there's plenty of that shit going on. So that you can never trust. But yes, it's the idea of this is not how you do it. This is not how you rise up. This is not this stuff. And basically, Hamas is almost all but admitted that they're not expecting this to accomplish anything. They just want a caliphate, right? Which basically means chaos. That's all they want. They don't want peace. They want to save their people. And there's, again, looking at your facts, doing your research, plenty of information out there that proves that Hamas takes half of whatever other people donate to them, and instead of giving it to their own people, they use it to fuel themselves, to make themselves bigger homes, to basically live in a more wealthier way, while their people are just getting the bare minimum to get by. So that has to be understood. So, and going with that, I meant to mention this before. Gaza Strip and West Bank are still very separated, because the West Bank is still Palestine and it's not run by Hamas. So that's part of the complication that makes this very complicated situation. You don't even have two same thinking minds here, because the West Bank is generally run by a regular type of governing, right? What is it? Mahmoud Abbas, right? Abbas is the leader.
Again,
and
I'll take, yeah.
Right, the Palestinian leader. And yes, that him and Hamas never agree. So right there, even that, it's just like no one agrees on anything, because they kind of know that this is just a violent, hate-filled organization. So, and you know, and then let's because at this point it does feel like I'm being a little too pro-Israel without acknowledging that it's all horrible. I don't blame so much the world for having these rallies and being pro-Palestine, because you look at what these people live through and what they're dealing with, and it's absolutely awful. And you know what? We don't need to get to now to see that. We've been seeing it for a long time. That even without rockets being fired and wars and attacks, they're living shitty lives. They're living a shitty standard of life, while most of their neighbors in Israel are not. They are living like a first world country in Israel. And so I totally sympathize with that. And I am
going to go. What about their neighbors elsewhere as well, right? Like the thing that I really appreciated, you commented last week on the whole, it's not, there's other people, right? There's the border to Egypt, right? There are other people that could help if they really care, you know, if this is that. So the border, so again, yeah, you're the history person, but that's just kind of how I feel. It's always like it's on Israel to figure this out and help.
Exactly. And you took the words right out of my mouth, because this is, again, that thing that the whole, whenever there's violence going on in Israel, all of the Arab nations and Muslim nations take it as an opportunity to basically be very anti-Semitic, and to shout their anti-Israel slogans. But the actual fact is, especially the Arab nations that surround it, they do almost nothing to help the Palestinian people. They just go rah, rah, rah whenever there's war going on. But they close their borders. They will not, like Jordan, Lebanon literally has a 100% we do not take refugees of Palestine, right? All right. Egypt, like you said, like they're still trying to open the border just to send some supplies, right? So you're like, so you're also anti-Israel, but you're bullshitting when you're saying you're supporting Palestine, because, and again, this is war. I'm talking about when it's not war, like a regular year, a regular month. Where's their help? Where's their assistance? Where is their helping to make that country, as small as it is, the little people, the little land that they have, and they're crammed in Palestine in such a small space? That's heartbreaking too, right? You see in Gaza, there's so many people in such a small space of land. How can you live well, right? At least they're on the shores, on the water. But yes, that's a huge thing too. These so-called Arab friends of theirs do the bare minimum to actually help them out when it's peacetime. They really don't. And you're right. Everything is always put on Israel's shoulder. Now, with that being said, Israel is a lot at fault. Israel has been dealing with this issue just in my lifetime for decades now, and they seem to be generally complacent in the status quo. That, okay, look, you got your land, and you know, but we're still in control, and all we care about is our Iron Dome and protecting us from your terrorists and stuff like that. But I don't think enough has been done, especially over so much time, so many generations, to really make a conceited effort to make a powerfully different move, a powerfully helpful idea, money, support of how can we avoid this cycle happening over and over again? How can we really improve the lives of just the regular people who are not violent, who are actually just trying to live their lives? because not enough is being done. So this is not something of the past 5 years. This is decades in the making here.
I know that Israel allows people to come and work in Israel so they can make money and afford more in Gaza. That's my understanding. But I think a lot of people have been talking about the wall in between Israel and Gaza. And I feel like that was built because we were, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, what it feels like and what I've heard and from like, it's every time Israel tries to help, like, you know, you give a little and then, okay, we're going to give you, we fought, like, again, we gave them a developed land and they chose to not take advantage of it. They chose to bomb the infrastructure there and not use it. You know, we give you, everyone's complaining about the water supply, right? And then you see like the videos of them using the water pipes to make rockets. So I feel like from that perspective, Israel is still trying to help.
But be careful what you said there, you see? This is part of the misinformation. You just said they. You were talking about Palestinian people, and then you said they are using it to make rockets. It's not the Palestinians.
So Hamas.
Hamas,
yes.
But that's my problem. When people start just, everyone's they, because it happens on the other side too. People
that's
are pro-Palestinian.
No, and that's
start
fair.
saying everyone's they, and you're like, oh my God, that is not they.
No. I don't think anyone that is innocent in this situation would, again, you're innocent, so I don't expect you to be building rockets. Right. I get that. You know, if you are innocent, you are not part of the rocket building brigade. But it's the whole notion of giving people land to try and make peace, and then not, again, just getting spit in the face, like we're not gonna take it, we're gonna bomb the infrastructure you gave us, because again, Israelis had to resettle. The people that were living in that space that they won in that war left, had to figure out their life to try to make peace. And like, so for me, hearing like how many Israeli lives were lost for a war, and then we gave back the land that we won in an attempt to make peace, only to be met with like just spit in the face.
And let's get
that's
to the
how
root.
I feel. And
let's
again,
get to the root of the problem. Let's get to the root of the problem. The problem is just plain, simple, vitriol, poison, hatred. Yeah. That is the root of the problem. So you're right. It doesn't matter what sort of solution come up, and that's where you start to feel that it's never, ever going to change. And obviously people that have been around much longer than us will go, yeah.
Well, but that's
I'm almost dead.
Their mandate, isn't it just we want Jews everywhere dead? Like, if that's all I'm hearing, you know, if Hamas is saying we just want Jews everywhere dead and all the horrible, horrible things, right? How can you make peace with that? And I think that's when people say that don't understand the situation, we just want peace. I'm like, of course, everyone wants peace. We've tried to make peace. This whole thing started because, you know, again, it's going to be a back and forth. No one's right. Everyone's hurt situation. I just think I'm just having these conversations because it's so easy to see one side and see, like, I was talking to someone the other day, and I'm like, Israel has terrible PR, you know? Like, we just need like a better social media manager. But like something along this line, like how much, if one, you know, like I see what's being shared on the other side, and I'm like, wow, that's compelling, you know? But I do feel for the innocent people in Gaza. It's a horrible situation, like we said. That is not a way to live. But when you're attacking, like all these interviews I'm watching of like, what is the appropriate response? You know, and it's like, you deserve it. Jews deserve, Israelis deserve everything we did to them in that massacre on October 7th. I'm like, whoa, I can't deal with anyone that says that. Right. That's horrible.
So again, the core of it is hatred. And what I mean by that is it is on both sides. So growing up, I was always taught that, it is the Arabs just have such unbelievable hatred in them, and they really are brought up as little kids to believe that the only good Jew is a dead Jew, and Jews are evil, and they're the problem of all the world things. And then I was enlightened a bit more as I got older. And here's a good example. When I went to visit my family last year in Israel, again, my sister's got a whole big family. One of my nieces, she was already like 18 at the time. God, I'm old. We're having dinner, and we got into the topic, or a related topic, and she just started talking about having a conversation with her friends, and they were saying the exact same things. They were just going like, They were just going like, oh, all Arabs are the worst, and like you can't trust any Arab. They're all these horrible people, and like all of them, no, all of them. And she started, and I looked at her, and I got so mad at her. I was like, how dare you? You've been brought up very open-minded, and you're letting now the same poison go into your head that these are not people, these are not human beings, that you see. And so now this is where the vicious cycle continues, because you pass it on to your children, they pass it on to their children, they pass it, and it never ends, you see. And so that's why I want to address the whole hatred. It is not one-sided at all, because maybe you don't hear the statement of death to all Arabs as much as you hear from some Arabs, but it's all the same thing. It's all just hatred in the end. It's all poisonous, toxic hatred of thinking that we can't talk to the other ones, or you see them as less human, or you can't negotiate with them, you can't reason with them, you can't even be in the same room with them, and you pass it on to your children. And this is why you go, this is never going to change. Right. Because the parents don't change. It's up to the parents, because as we know, any lasting change, real powerful change, takes a long time. It takes generations, sometimes hundreds of years, right? And how can it change when the generations don't learn? The generations do not just learn. And so, yeah. So of course, course, violence will keep being the answer, because they're all brought up to believe this. So of course, violence begets violence begets violence, because all of these people keep being brought up that they are the enemy. They are these terrible people. And of course, there's exceptions, but I would guess a good majority is not brought up thinking the right way in that sense, around their dinner table.
We can't speak for every single household in every place in the Middle East, right? I can't do that. That's not my intention, but it's the whole notion. And this is what I was telling people too. If you could just challenge the biases you have, because I've definitely been challenging my biases that I had when I was growing up as a kid, but I'm an adult now. I can make my own decisions. I read both sides. I see both sides. I know both sides are hurting. I do think it's very important with all this information out there and misinformation that you really take the time to challenge your biases, and because otherwise we're not going to grow, like what you said, right? We're just going to keep being fueled by hate, and that's not getting us anywhere. And
yeah, I love that you brought back misinformation, because I want to finally get into that. We don't need to go too much, because everyone talks about it. Is that this was a good reminder, right? Because again, I have lots of friends that are pro-Palestinian, and that's part of, I pride myself in being a very open-minded guy. I have plenty of friends who think very differently, even politically. Like Karen. Karen is with us right now. She is a very conservative person. I am a very liberal person, but I respect the hell out of her. See, she's an actress too. Karen.
I love that her name's Karen.
Hi, Karen.
It's like, I'm sorry for your name. You've had a rough go. I feel for you. Okay.
Well, it's spelled differently.
I know, I did.
I
did
Karen.
Okay. Keren versus the A. Yeah.
But anyway, I pride myself, and that's part of being a pragmatic, open-minded person, is that I respect other people's point of views. I like to listen. I like to try and understand, and maybe I'll grow from it, and I'll change my views a bit and stuff like that, right? So anyway, I started to see all these friends posting pro-Palestinian stuff, which I was totally respecting, but then I would see some serious misinformation posted, and that's when I get irked.
Yeah.
So the real problem with misinformation just in social media these days, especially when you come on very emotional chord things like a political subject or whatever it is that what ends up happening? You end up following a page that thinks like you, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
You follow a political page, or let's say like I said, this sort of idea, a war page, and you stop questioning everything they post. You start assuming, like, yes, you agree on their general message, but you start assuming that everything they post must be the truth, right? So, for example, like I said, someone last week was posting constantly, sharing to their story this pro-Palestinian stuff, and then I caught one that just flat out said Palestine was a country that Israel took over. I'm like, no, it wasn't. It just was not. Yeah. And so the fact that you're not even questioning that for a moment, any of you who were here earlier on, I gave you most of the history lesson right there. It was completely controlled by the Ottoman Empire for 400 years, completely controlled by the British Empire for 20 years, and then the British and the United Nations gave it to the Jewish people in Israel. It was not a country.
Yeah.
So again, you can call it an anal thing, but it's true. So even though you can go, oh, well, that's not the point, David. We're talking about the Palestinian people. It's like, yeah, but you're still spreading misinformation. So if you start now disregarding the misinformation just because it doesn't matter that much to the point you're making, then that's where it all snowballs. And so that's all I really want to talk about with, in these cases, with social media misinformation, is that people get used to following a certain political page, and they just believe, okay, I'll give you an example. I'm a very liberal person. I follow Occupy Democrats page. You know, and they give a lot of anti-Trump stuff and stuff like that. And I enjoy it, but I never for a second just always believe that everything they say is fine. Sometimes I read some of the things they go and I go, okay, this seems like you're trying to make something out of nothing. This, just to please your fan base, right? And get them all riled up. So I always try and keep them open mind. But yes, the misinformation is so easy with passionate subjects. When there are things we feel so passionate about, we get blinded. We get blinded. You know, just like the whole controversy of the hospital bombing. You could give probably so much evidence to people that think the Israelis bombed it, but they will refuse to see it. They'll be like, no, the Israelis did it, and they're covering it up. And see, and again, I don't know for a fact either. I'm just giving it as a possible example.
Well, no, that's fair, because again, I'm watching CNN and I'm watching the footage of like how Israel couldn't have done it, and like.
Yeah, very pro-Israel, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, and again, like I'm gonna watch it right now because 13 days, it's been rough. I'm like, I need to see some pro-Israel stuff. So I'm aware, but again, it's not like here was what was hard for me this week, was someone had shared, and I agree with the sentiment. Someone had shared, we're debating who did what and whose side it was, but still the people in the hospital were affected, right? We're not talking about the people in the hospital. And so I hear that, but then I also question, so how come when we said, the 40 babies were killed, we were debating who beheaded, like, was it beheading or just a slaughter? So that to me is like, I just see both sides having the exact same arguments over and over again. And it's so, like you said, there's so much emotion. There's so much,
emotion has always blinded humanity throughout history. Even love, right? I'm so in love with you, but I'm blind to the obvious red flags.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm so emotional. Yeah. That's I mean, I guess if you wanted to create the perfect human being, and I guess that's where we're always striving to evolve to as a species, is to get that perfect balance of thinking and emotion. Because you don't want to lose either. You don't want to lose all emotion, and you don't want to lose all rationale,
right,
or rational thinking. And yes, it's the problem is that when our emotion gets triggered, this sacrifices a bit. And anyway, so that is what happens with these misinformations, is that you don't want to see it because it's not in line with what you want to believe. And I think,
or even times, like, even if, because I will watch, what the other side is saying, because again, a loss of life, in my opinion, is a loss of life, unless you were attacking me. Right, there's my caveat, unless you were trying to attack me, self-defense. But that's how I feel. But there is so, like, oh my gosh, it's just so many lives. And what's so sad is this is just the beginning, unfortunately. And already, I think for me, what's been hard is seeing, all the different sides. And I go, oh, wow, I didn't know so many people hate the Jews. Interesting. So again, I appreciate the clarity on one hand. Good to know. I don't have close friends for a reason, but it's still quite hard to see. And again, the people that have reached out, and I've been actually so impressed and so surprised by the people that have reached out, and I'm grateful for every single person, especially if you're not Jewish, just to reach out and just express, hope you're okay kind of thing. I just really want people to question not just their biases, but like try and keep an open mind to both sides, especially if you are not emotionally connected. Because again, for me, like I said, I have family in Israel. I'm Jewish, like granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor. I'm aware of my bias, but I still feel for the other side. It is not a great situation. But I would just really appreciate everyone reciprocate that favor. And again, why I want to have these chats. Like, I appreciate how pragmatic you were and the information that you shared. I think it was so valuable. And again, I didn't mean to cut you off of your thought, but I'm just getting that out there before I forget to say all that, because feel in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I've said most of what I need to say, because we could go on for a while, but I would generally want to finish on this thought and message is, again, it is not a black and white issue.
Yeah.
And people that keep trying to pretend like it's black and white, you're actually the cause of the ongoing problem. Is when you treat something like this as black and white, it's just hatred. That's what you create. You create hatred. You think you're spreading a good cause. You think you're spreading justice, righteousness. But when you treat a situation as very few things in life are black and white, first of all. And when you treat something as long and dug in as this issue that, again, goes back thousands of years, if you want to just talk about the land, then you are a disservice to the so-called peaceful person that you believe you are. So someone, like I said, the amazing thing is the amount of friends I know and people that are pro-Palestinian, which is great, but their solution seems to be go away. Really? Is this, in this modern day, is that your realistic solution that you think will not lead to war and massive killings? To just say, you're occupying this land, go away? You really expect 10 million people? That's hatred, man. That is total hatred. Be realistic here. Stop. It's like I said, drawing a line in the sand. Like, when does occupation not count anymore, right? Oh, well, the indigenous people of America is the same thing. It's like, when do you stop the line? And you stop and you look to the future and you say, forget the past. Let's think of a solution for the future. How do we make things better? And so you come up with these rather immature statements of just get off our land. What do you think is going to be the result if that actually starts to kind of happen? Bloodshed, much more bloodshed, much worse than what we're seeing. A real war on many fronts. And so the fact that you are promoting this message, which I know you don't think of it that way, but that's essentially it, because you're treating it as black or white. And in the end, it is hatred. It is pure hatred, because what do you realize? Like, be a realist here. And again, when people are at protests and stuff, even Israelis at protests, they're way too emotionally hot. They're way too emotionally hot. Step back. Pretend you are a world leader right now. Give me your hand and tell me, what is your viable solution here? Put your emotions aside for a moment. And if you really care about all human life equally, then that is your duty, to take that approach. That is what you need to do in such a polarizing issue such as this.
I felt that. That was so well said. Oh my gosh. Oh, the world leader, the hand outstretched.
So,
oh.
I'm unemployed right now.
Oh my gosh.
You want to hire me to run the country?
Woo!
I'll do it. Thank you. No, but yeah, that's kind of how I see basically conflicts of all kinds. They're all pretty much the same in the end, especially war and country conflicts. That's really what it is people are always reacting way too emotionally and are trying to improve things by looking back instead of looking forward. Yeah. So that's fine if you always want to believe that Israel is an occupying force and the Palestinian people. And again, they are to a certain extent. I mean, just imagine the Palestinian people that were originally there and were like, hey, what the fuck? Even though they didn't have a country, but they were still living there. They're like, whoa, what's going on here, right? What's happening to my land, right? The point is, that is a long time ago. We need to move forward and find a better way for both the Israeli people and the Palestinian people. That is the only way to move forward. And this violence is just, it's disgusting that in this day and age, this is how we react to things and try to solve things. And we're at our lowest low, like I said, but I'm always an eternal optimist, and you need to be. If you are a true optimist, you need to try and think that way. That in a real world situation, what would you do? What would you do if you had the choice? What would you do here that would benefit all peoples, not just the one you're attached to?
I want to leave that as rhetorical. I like that.
Yeah. No. It is
like, okay, because I'm like, oh gosh, do I have to come
Don't
up with
send me messages.
I said just an hour.
DM
Okay. Okay, just like put in the chat. Okay. But David, thank you so much for these. Like, I really, really appreciate you being willing to have this talk and just sharing so much. I feel like I learned so much today. And again, like you said, if there's anything that doesn't check out, you know, that's.
And I just want to say too, I'm very grateful that you welcomed me on. You gave me the opportunity, and I'm also proud of myself because honestly, I'm usually one of those people that just doesn't ruffle feathers on a very polarizing subject. And especially when, you know, your career, you're an actor and all stuff, and you're like, uh-oh, I'm going to piss some people off here. I usually avoid that stuff. But I really realized that the reason I'm doing this talk is because I'm coming at it from all angles. I'm not here to spout propaganda and stuff like that. I am here to give you the most logical, pragmatic way of how I view the situation. And above all else, teach history, because I honestly feel that probably more than 90% of people out there that are passionate about the subject on either blade are fucking clueless on history. Right?
I'm just like, I'm waiting for your YouTube channel of History with Dave or something like that. I'm there for it.
That too. I wanted to do this too because I know I need some momentum, because I kind of want to start my own like podcast and stuff like that. I've been meaning to do it for a while. So
there you go.
I did this for selfish
feel
reasons.
Inspired and keep sharing your knowledge of history. And I'll only take 10%.
Better than my agent, so go ahead.
No, I was being considerate. Fellow Jew, from one Jew to another. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, thank you all for watching live. Thank you for the people who are watching after. I appreciate people being open to listen and just being able to have these conversations. I really, the fact that we live in a place where we can have these conversations is also something I truly value.
It's so cool.
Right?
So cool.
Yeah. But yes, hope everyone is staying safe and have as good a weekend as you can.
Okay, Robyn.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.